Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make chicken with cheese and pasta. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this, and I have to tell you, this has such a great flavor to it when you're done, because if you like chicken and you like cheesy pasta, put this all together with some seasoning and it's just going to turn into such an amazing thing that I'm pretty sure that once you try this, it'll be something you want to make time and time again. Because I was impressed when I made this. I was just like, okay, this has the best taste, because the mix of cheese in this and everything just works so well to make this taste so good. So let's get started with this. We're going to cut the fat off of our chicken, make sure that there are no hard pieces on it, and then once we're done with that part, we're going to cut this into slices, and we're basically going to cut it into cubes after we get it all sliced up, because we don't want these really huge pieces, but we kind of want it like bite-sized bits, because remember, this is going to mix in with your cheese sauce and your pasta, so we kind of want it to be something when you're going to use a fork to pick it up with, you're not going to have like enormous pieces of chicken. So go ahead and cut through this and just work your way from one breast to the other. Now, the good thing about using these two breasts, there's going to be a lot of meat here that you wouldn't really expect for just two chicken breasts. The best thing about it was when you mix it with the pasta and the sauce and everything else, it's probably enough to feed 3 to 4 people, especially if you're going to add something else with it, like, you know, some bread or something else. Even if you added a salad or whatever, this works to feed like a family for the most part here, because if you're just like maybe 3 people, 4 people in your family, you're good to go. So we're going to go ahead next to our cheese. These are about 3-ounce blocks. The one is Colby Jack, the other is mozzarella. And what we're going to do is just cut these into smaller pieces, so that way when they go into our cheese sauce later, they'll melt up. Now, yes, you could have shredded these with a grater or whatever. You really don't have to, because once you cut these down to a decent size, they're going to melt anyway, and this was just faster than going through the whole process of using a grater and having to clean it up later. So once these are cut into the little blocks, we're going to take them, put them into a container and set them to the side, because we're not going to need them for a minute, but I like to get these things out of the way before I start doing other things. So once the cheese is all in your container, just put it to the side. It will be fine until we actually get around to using it. Now, in a large pot, we're going to add water to this, some salt and some oil, and we're going to get this up to temperature because we're going to cook our shells in here. And we're going to have about 2 cups of shells going into this. So once you're up to temperature, put them in, cook them to the time that it says on the package, because probably, you know, 9 minutes or so will do for this. And then we're going to drain these and set them aside when they're done, and they're going to wait until we bring them back to put them into the cheese sauce. So once you drain the water off of them, put a lid on it, set it to the side. We can bring them back later and add them in, and it's not going to hurt to have them sit until we're ready to keep going with the next step of this. So once they're done, put them to the side, like I said, after they're drained. And then you're going to need a large skillet, because we're going to cook our chicken up next, and we're going to put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil into our pan, and then bring in our chicken, and we're going to season our chicken while it's cooking in here. So you're going to need a tablespoon of chicken seasoning and a tablespoon of garlic powder, and we're going to put this in here and get it really coated on top. Now once you have that oil in the pan, you move this around a little bit. It's going to help the seasoning stick to it, which is great. But once the seasoning's in, start moving it. We're going to put this on medium-high heat and cook this up. You're going to need to cook it for at least 5 to 7 minutes. You want to go for an internal temperature of the chicken of 165 degrees. But we just want to make sure that it really cooks up before we move on to the next step, because we want this to be very well cooked. We don't want any chance of any of that not being done yet. And now, once we get to the next step of this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter into our chicken and let that melt down, and then we're going to bring in 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, and we're going to cook this garlic for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. We don't want to go way over that because we don't want to scorch the garlic. And once all of this is cooked up, we're going to remove the chicken and set it aside and start on to the next step of this. We just need to make sure that everything is ready to go, that the garlic is cooked, and then just remove it, set it onto a plate. We can bring this back in a minute. And then afterwards, we're going to start making up the cheese sauce. So once everything is out of there, we're just taking out the chicken. Now there's the drippings, everything in the pan is staying in there. The butter, all of it is staying in the pan. And we're going to use that in the mix that we're about to do. So Once everything's removed, we're going to bring in 2 tablespoons of flour to the skillet, and we're going to move this around and cook it for about like 2 minutes, because we want to make sure that we cook out that flour taste, but we're going to actually let it absorb everything in the pan, because it's going to actually take in the butter, any of the drippings, any whatever the garlic that was left in there is going to mix in. And then we're going to bring in 3/4 of a cup of chicken broth and 1.5 cups of milk, but we're not putting it all in at once. We're going to start off with a little bit of chicken broth at a time until we mix it into the pan and break this up. Then we're going to add a little bit of the milk, the rest of the chicken broth, and then the rest of the milk. So we're going to kind of alternate it. So just put in a little bit of the chicken broth at first and start mixing it into what's there, so that way we break this up a little bit, and that way it's not totally dried out. And then we're just going to keep adding until we actually turn this into a liquid. So go ahead, add more of your chicken broth and break it up a little bit more. And at this point, you're going to want to start thinking about getting a slotted spoon. This will be your friend, because it's going to help break this up. And we're just going to keep mixing this until it actually goes completely into a roux, which we're just going to work this for what it's worth until everything is in there. And then later on, we're going to bring the cheese into it. So go ahead and keep mixing this as it's breaking up. And this is going to take a few minutes to go ahead and do this and get everything in there and totally get it mixed through. Because for one, you're breaking up what's already in the pan, but two, you're going to actually cook this until it thickens after all of the milk and the broth is into it. So keep stirring as you go and keep adding in. And as you can see, what's in my pan right now is starting to break up and mix into the chicken broth that we're putting in there. And that's the important part, is to get this really smooth and broken up and ready to roll. But one important thing, keep stirring it while you're doing this. That way, once you add stuff into it, it mixes in perfectly and you don't have a problem. And as this comes up to temperature, it's really going to work well for you, because remember, when you're adding the fluid into this, like if you're adding in chicken broth or you're adding in milk, it's either going to be at room temperature or out of your refrigerator, and it's got to heat up. So just keep mixing as you go all the way through this. And then as we go, just go ahead and add in the rest of everything that you have on hand here for the liquids. And the best thing about this is the more you move your spoon around, the more you go with this and the temperature is coming up, the more this is mixing together, and it's really getting really smooth and really silky, and that's going to be the best part about it. And as you can see, it's really thickened here. So we're ready for our cheese to come in. So we're just going to go ahead and put all the cheese in and let it go all over the place. Don't pile it in one pile. And it'll start to melt. And all you need to do is stir this periodically as it's melting to make sure that it incorporates in. And it won't take all that long for this to do it. We're talking like maybe a minute to 2 minutes for your cheese to really go in, because your pan is already hot for the fact that it's been in there cooking this stuff the whole time. So just keep stirring this until it's all mixed through. And then once we get it melted and everything's right, then we're going to bring back in the chicken and the pasta that we've already cooked and use them in this. So just make sure that everything melts down. If you have any large blocks of the cheese, break them up a little bit, especially if they stuck together. Just keep moving them through. And then once it's completely mixed, everything's going to go back in here. And as you can see, all of my cheese is incorporated at this point. So I'm going to bring my chicken in first, mix it up a little bit, get it coated, and then bring in the pasta. Now, your pasta, when you're bringing it out of your original pot, shouldn't really be all that stuck together or anything. Even though we drain the water from it, it should be fine to just bring straight into this. And once it's in, you're going to mix it up to coat it. Now, when you go to serve this and you put it on your plate, you could top this like with parsley or red pepper flakes or something like that, just to give it a little funky coloring to it. But it also, the red pepper flakes are going to set off the flavor of this a lot. And we're just going to mix this up, let it sit for like about 3 or 4 minutes, so that way everything is totally incorporated and coated and the cheese sauce is thickened. And when you're done, it'll look something like this. And this is what was on my plate. I served it with some bread, and this just had the best flavor, and I think you might just like this. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.